was always better before.
Yeah, of course.
Back in my day. I didn't like back in my day. I hated that industry. That industry didn't really allow any of us really to grow.
Really?
Don't you think so? Do you think it was, I'm not going to say the obvious names, but like the 6 guys that mixed every album. Actually, probably it was more like 3 guys back in the late 90s. It was, nobody got a look in. I didn't like that. I didn't like that day. I like this day now.
Yeah. This is a great time for music.
Yeah.
A very exciting time for music. There's way more music and way more people engaging with music than ever before.
And last year, streaming income did more than double the amount of lost income in other formats. So we actually grew last year.
Yeah, I mean, I work closely with some guys who are basically a think tank for the music industry, and we're projecting somewhere between $50 and $100 billion in total music industry revenue over the next 10 years. Like, we'll get there.
Yeah, amazing. My
friend says 100. I think it's probably closer to 45 or 50, but that's still 2.5 times what it ever was.
There you go. That's a nice little return on investment.
It is. Well, it's you can see the labels are starting to party again.
Yeah.
You know, they're starting to see the money now. Whether the writers and the artists are seeing the money, we don't know, but they will.
They will.
Well, especially with what Spotify just did, where they just offered to pay artists and their management companies directly. Don't need a label, don't need distribution. Boom, direct payment.
Right.
And they don't take the rights for the masters.
That's amazing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So that's going to shake the industry up a lot.
I also think Spotify has the potential to be Netflix. What I mean by that is they could just come along and go, hey, I want you to mix it. I want you to record it. I want Paul McCartney to write the song. You know, they can do, where Netflix is, you know, for ages was beholden to TV shows, TV companies.
Yeah, they're doing their own original content.
Their original content.
X says that he's not going to do original content, but we'll see.
I think it's just going to happen when it happens.
I think Spotify's an exit play.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but there's actually we're doing a panel on it on Saturday at the Tons panel, the other Nashville Society. We're doing a panel, I think around noon, about the new music industry monetization.
You know what I'm going to do
side of things.
At 4, when we do our panel, I'm going to ask you how that went.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be a good topic of discussion.
Sweet.
You might well direct that panel. That's nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
You've just made that a lot easier. Yay!
Sure.
Panel discussion sorted out by courtesy of.
Yeah, my deck's in my laptop somewhere. We can go through all that stuff.
No, I'm totally excited. I love it. I love that. Look, where else could we do something like this? I mean, all of this stuff was not available to us even 10, definitely 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Any of this kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
And there was all this sort of protectorate kind of idea of like, I don't want anybody to see that I just boosted 60 hertz on my kick. It's just like...
Yeah, I never understood that. I never understood the whole, you can't look at this, like, this is all top secret. I never got that.
Yeah, so like I was saying, the industry for me, I agree, it's growing. The entry level is so much lower now. But I was thinking, because we're talking... we've been tracking all the different variations, so the guys can go away and they can mix any combination of microphones, whichever way they want to do. They want the Glyn Johns meets this mic, that mic. Obviously, we use the chamber. We face the drums.
You won't use the chamber in the mix. We all record it and then we all mute it. It never works, except as a trick.
For real?
Yeah. Everybody who cuts in D cuts the chamber. Every time we mix it, it ends up getting muted.
Really?
Sorry, John. No, it's fun for a trick, but it's not super useful. Most of the people use it for like drums and stuff. It's not super useful to that.
Isn't it just because of the Kings of Leon record, because you hear the chamber?
Yeah, probably.
So, but now everybody doesn't want the same.
But I thought they cut that in A. Lol.
No, they did it in this room.
Oh, they cut in D. No one.
Yeah.
Right. Well.
But yeah, no, that makes sense. There's certain things that we do that creates energy while you're tracking, but doesn't mean.
I'm a huge believer in that. In fact, every time I cut drums, you talk about putting all those mics on the drums. I always put at least 3 setups on a drum kit.
Great.
And I, put them out on the console and group them, and it's like 1 drum sound, 2nd drum sound, 3rd drum sound. So boom, 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 you can have it like immediately, depending on what the song is or what the vibe is or what the drummer wants to hear. So like, why not have all those options? You're not going to use them later, but it's nice to have them.
No, I agree entirely. And especially when you work in Nashville and people are trying to get X number of songs done a day.
Yeah.
You do the 1 setup. The next day you think, we're going to do the 3 songs that only need the Glyn Johns technique. And you just like, solo, there they are.
There you go. And I usually set up, like you guys did, a little loop kit in the side too, just for fun stuff.
That's great. Have you tracked in this room much?
Mm-hmm. Yep, almost everything I've cut in Nashville has been here, Ocean Way, or Sound Emporium. Actually, probably some at the Castle, but this is the best drum room in Nashville.
Great. Well, we've had a wonderful time on it. Did you make records on tape, or did you start? What was your sort of crossover point? What age did you cut? Not age, year did you get in?
To not tape?
Well, just like when you first started making records, was it the tail end of tape?
I'm terrible with dates, so
just ish then.
Like mid-90s. Right. I mean, it was still tape. This town had a really weird tape format, 32-track digital Mitsubishi. Yeah, the biggest producer in country. Which, by the way, I didn't do country music until like a couple of years ago. Like, I'm new to country. In fact, people used to ask me what kind of music I worked on. I said ABC, anything but country. This producer, Jimmy Bowen, really liked this Mitsubishi digital 32-track tape format, so all of the studios had it. So I remember finagling with that nightmare of a machine. And then the Sonys came in, the 48s. Which were awesome. Wow, look at all these tracks. It's great. And then there were 2 48s, and then there were 3 48s, and so I remember that whole process. I guess, when I started, it was all tape, and especially as an assistant, I learned how to edit tape and some of the stuff that Richard was talking about, all those crazy manipulations. That was a nightmare, and it really got your adrenaline going. But sometimes that's all you could do. I've done window edits. On 2-inch tape. That's incredibly nerve-wracking. But for me, personally, it started to transition when the tape stock started to not sound good. I remember specifically doing a record and sending it to, it was either Jensen or Calby at Sterling, and we sent him the half-inch, and we sent him the digital files, and they were like, I think it was Ted. He was like, man, you know what? I got to use a digital in this because these reels sound different. From reel to reel. Like the quality started to go down. And then I don't know if it's back. Vance and I talk about this all the time. I did a thing for Third Man like a couple years ago, and I remember doing edits and the backing was peeling off the tape and all of this stuff because Jack's all analog. So the entire thing was analog. It was cut to analog and mixed to analog and stereo and surround and all this stuff. And I just remember being really bummed out because I'm sitting there like, I can't trust what I'm printing to. That's scary. So started to transition out of that. And, honestly, recently with some of the Burl converters, or I don't know if you've heard these, but the new Rupert Neve Designs box is insane.
I've got to hear it. That'd be great.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Well, we'll be there tomorrow. I'll go and see you.
Yeah, ask him about it. It's 8.
Jonathan Pines.
They made a box with 8 Class A Transformer Neve preamps and really nice converters, and it's Dante, and it sounds amazing. Wow. And you just, it's a cable.
First time hearing. That sounds amazing.
It's fantastic. We actually brought it into a mastering studio, shot out a bunch of converters, and this consistently was in like the top 2 in a mastering setting.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, with stuff like that, you can kind of get close to some of that saturation and distortion. I mean, there's nothing as immediate as tape. There's nothing that makes musicians play better than, all right, we're cutting the tape, don't screw up.
Yeah, exactly. That experience of coming back and hearing you going, oh, I need to lay back, or I need to, rather than just assuming it's going to get fixed for you. Yeah,
and Richard was talking about that too. Yeah. There was an immediacy to having to commit and having to do all that stuff, which we don't have anymore, so I kind of miss that.
Yeah.
But I don't miss seeing a tape machine snap a reel of 2-inch and spray it all over the machine room.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of a love affair with tape that was confusingly all about the sonic characteristics, and I think more of it to me is about the performance, about the fact that you're not looking at your music, you're listening to music. I still think that that's the biggest deal, because I remember being a musician. I remember working with Don Smith as a musician, and he was a hero of mine from the records he made. And I just remember Brian McLeod was the drummer. It was amazing. And I'm coming fantastic. In and playing bass, and I'm listening back to myself going, I should probably lay back, and I need to punch this part, do that. Not one part of it. Now, you just think so differently now.
That's true. Yeah, you would listen.
Yeah. Like
all the guys would listen to their parts, and now they're like, either you can fix that, right? Or they just assume on some of these country records, you just assume that an editor is going to go through it.
Right.
So there's just less. I mean, these guys are amazing players. They don't screw up much.
Sure.
But the subtleties and stuff, they're like, they're going to fix it. So
That's a tough one, because I never really thought that a drummer was out of time unless it was so badly out of time. Otherwise, if Brian McLeod or Victor Andrizzo or whoever it might be is playing drums, I'm going to assume that if the kick is early or late, it's because he's trying to add some energy to it.
there's a reason for it.
There's a reason for it.
Unless it's Koliuta, who's all over the. Oh no, Aronoff. Okay, so Kenny is an amazing drummer, but if you listen to Kenny playing and you listen to the click that he's hearing, it's a horror show.
Yeah.
Like I remember doing a record with him, with Peter Collins, and it was just like we had to turn the click off, and you turn the click off, and the drums sound great.
Yeah.
And everybody plays to. You feed Vinny the click, and everybody else gets Vinny, and it works great.
Yeah.
But man, he was nowhere near the grid ever.
Yeah.
And who cares? It felt awesome.
Yeah. I wonder with Kenny, because you know he was an orchestra guy. He came up. He went. I think he went to IU. Anyway, he went and he was an orchestra pit guy. And you know, in classical, they're and even when they're being fed a uri, if the uri's like this, they're like ga, ga, ga. So I wonder if he learned to play to the click like that.
Could be.
Yeah, because he charts. I remember working with him a couple of years ago, and he had just done that Medal of Freedom thing. Do you remember when he did that? And he was the drummer, and about 7 different artists came out.
Oh, yeah,
And he had to do this Beatles medley going into. It was like 12 minutes of music. And so I just watched it or seen a rerun, and I said to him, wow, you know, how did you learn all that music? He's like, I didn't learn it. Because I don't have time to learn 12 minutes of music. He goes, I just listened down and charted it and then played it. So I went back and onto YouTube and saw, he just had this chart, and he's just like this. Like just turning pages and playing it. That's he can play, he can read and play like he knows the song.
Oh, so he was, when you said charted, he was actually reading score?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because he grew up an orchestra pit guy, so he could sit there and write every single frickin' performance out.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I wonder if that, one of those is, I have to ask him. I mean, the stuff we did, I did an album with him a couple of years ago, and we did it with no click, if it works. Now, you track drums in your place, though, don't you, sometimes?
No, I don't have space in my room to track anything.
There was that room in the back you wouldn't let me see.
Yeah, because it was full of junk, which has since been moved to a warehouse. So now I have a warehouse full of junk and a usable couch in my studio. But no, I don't track at my place. We usually end up here.
Great. So how did you transition into country then? Because you've got a nice little run on country at the moment.
Yeah. How did I transition into country? Randomly. A guy I'd known forever, this guy named Jay Joyce, who's a producer who had been making rock records. And I mean, he made like Patty Griffin's Flaming Red record is a banner record. One of the first records I worked on as an assistant engineer was Flaming Red. I had known Jay for forever. He had done a record with this guy named Eric Church. He didn't want it to sound like a typical country record, so he asked me to mix it. That did really well. And then we went in and I got to record and then mix this record for Little Big Town, which was a record that they were like, you know, they had made a couple records and they were kind of going out, and this was their swan song, and everyone was really nervous, and we did it kind of fast. Like we tracked the whole record in, I don't know, like 5 or 6 days, vocals live on the floor, all 4 of them, like everybody in Sound Emporium, and mixed it in probably 10 or 11 with a few days of overdubs running through. And long story short, it like blew up and became the hit of the summer. It was this massive record for them, and you know, it turned their career around. But I remember having arguments on it where like I was putting insane amounts of tape slap on the vocal, and Jay was totally into it, and the band was scared of it. And to their credit, you know, they came back a couple days later and they were like, it was cooler like that, like put the slap back on, you know. And everyone was like, radio's not going to play this. And then 6 months later, everyone was like, can you make it sound like Little Big Town with all the vocal slap? So, you know, whatever. So those 2 records happened, and then I did a song with Shania, and then like boom, it was all this country stuff. So it was kind of fun.
I saw last week you had 2 consecutive country number ones.
Yep, back-to-back number ones, which was crazy. Yeah, Dirks and David Lee Murphy, who's an old school country guy that is an old friend of Kenny Chesney's. So Kenny came in and sang on that song, and yeah, he had his first number one since he wrote some massive hit like back in the day, which was really cool.
It's great.
Yeah, he's really cool. So it's been fun.
It's great. Are you still getting to mix some rock and stuff as well in between?
Yeah, actually, I came over here from doing a song for this band called Colony House, which is this really cool indie band, and you would love it. It's all like, it's kind of like 80s drums and synths, and then like just super distorted guitar in the chorus, and it was a blast.
Excellent.
Yeah, really cool.
That's fantastic.
So, in fact, when we're done here, I'm probably gonna have to go back with the producer and tweak on that.
Well, I mean, that's the blessing and the curse of what we do.
Yeah, that's part of the gig. We get paid to listen to music. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking about the tape thing. 'Cause I think one of the other realities of tape, and I was talking about this with Richard as well, you may have heard us touching on this, is that even 15 years ago when we were only mixing on consoles, you'd come into a studio and you'd have 4 or 5 multi-effects. Mm-hmm. And that was it. So you were sitting there going, if you were printing stuff deliberately because you wouldn't have access to it again. So if there was a particular reverb you wanted or a particular delay, you would print it.
Yeah, if you had tape tracks left over.
If you had tape tracks, or you'd print it as you were recording.
Oh,
so
sure.
So there's a sort of kind of a catch-22, because the beauty that comes with that is that you're committing. You're committing to a sound, then you're building from it. But I think that it's also a little disingenuous sometimes because people forget that. Because I believe that, let's just think about it. If the Beatles did have 24 tracks, I think they would have been just a great band, if not better. Who knows? But they probably would have loved that freedom.
Sure.
And I come up against this a lot because Richard touched on it when he talked about. Did he say who the singer was?
He never did say.
No, I think. He didn't say who the singer was. Couldn't get this note. Some very famous singer he was working with couldn't get a high note. So all he did was on this. It wasn't a studio. He would punch into a various speed just on the note, and it would just slow it down significantly. Sorry, speed it up significantly, so they would push higher than the note. Is that what he was saying? Can't remember. Anyway, but he would change the pitch of it when they were coming to that note, and then they would be in tune just for that moment.
He's ingenious.
Yeah. So he'd do these little tricks. So when I hear all these things, I'm just constantly reminded, because I think we all want to believe that it was just magic. Back in the 60s and 70s, everybody was a genius. The engineers were just incredible. The musicians walked in there, you just threw up some mics and bang, it was the biggest song you've ever heard in your life. and yet we all know, once you get talking to these guys, it was a lot of work.
Ton of work.
And so now all we're doing is we have tools to just make it easier.
Yes.
But they still did all those things.
I remember assisting and tuning vocals by running the vocal through a harmonizer and connecting a keyboard to the harmonizer and just sitting there with the pitch bend wheel and manipulating the vocal in real time and just punching it onto another track. And that was tedious as hell. Like that took comping vocals took forever. I mean, do you remember that? There was an analog box with switches and a crossfader, so you could switch to like 4 different tracks and throw the crossfader in between words, and you could comp vocals or even syllables if you were fast enough. That was. I'm glad those days are over.
Yeah, me too.
But the Beatles had 24 tracks. They just recorded 7 and bounced it to the 8th, and then recorded another 7 and bounced it to the.
Yeah.
They would keep layering it. They just couldn't go backwards, which necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All the best people that I know commit to stuff in the moment.
Yeah.
Like all the best stuff, you just commit to it. If you don't like that guitar sound, get another guitar sound. If it's not right for the song, why are you recording it?
Yeah.
So I like committing stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Otherwise, there's just absolutely no focus. You have no idea where you're going.
Yeah. I actually I love painting myself into a corner too, because then it makes it a lot more interesting to figure out, oh shit, and now what am I going to do?
I always love that Eno story with, is it With and Without You, where he threatens to
erase the tape.
Yeah.
I want to say that he actually was going to erase the tape and somebody stopped him.
Yeah, they got into an altercation or something, yeah.
Yeah.
But his point was that they'd spent so long working on the song, he's just like, go in the room and replay it. You know all the right parts now. You've written all the right parts. Yeah. It's just going to feel so much better if you just go in and play it for real, instead of overdubbing and editing and overdubbing and fixing and stuff like that.
I heard a rumor I think Lily White told me this. He was doing a U2 record and they were at Abbey Road. And I can't vouch for this. Like, I could just be making this up in my mind. But he said that they got a hold of George Martin. And Bono grabbed George and came and played him parts of what was probably Atomic Bomb, maybe. And he played him a couple of songs that they had been working on forever and had orchestra all over it and all of this stuff. And he said, what do you think? And Martin looked at him and said, well, that's shit, isn't it? Like, dead serious. And Bono was like, yeah, it is. Scrapped it. And they went in and recut like half that record in the next couple of days. Like, boom, 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 boom. And that's what ended up on the record. Which is, when you think about it, like that's a really interesting thing. Having the balls to be like, you know what? Yeah, this isn't good enough. I'm not going to try and fix it. I'm going to just redo it. Like, that's pro.
It's definitely pro. It's also a testament to George Martin that he has no problem with being honest.
No. Yeah, well, I think he's kind of earned that right.
Yeah. Definitely earned the right, but I still have worked as an engineer in many sessions where I'm listening to the producer go, it's not that you're out of tune. It's just, if you could, and you're literally sitting there thinking, how is the artist going to learn from this?
Right. It's a fine line.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a pretty blunt guy. So am I. I'm from Jersey. So when people ask my opinion, I give it to them. I'm not going to lie to make somebody feel better. Like, and sometimes people get offended, and then usually they come around to like thanks. I can trust you to tell me
exactly
what's really going on, and that's valuable to someone who wants their ego stroked is going to hate that. Somebody who wants whatever they're doing to be the best that it can be will absolutely love that. So you try and surround yourself with those people. Yeah,
I agree. And when you work with the guys and girls who've got like 40-year careers or whatever, if you're going to start a conversation with, I really like the thing that they're just going to ignore you. We both work with Tyler, and he's just like, if you were like, oh my God, it's, I just want to let you know, he'll literally be, anyway, so he'll just blank you. He just won't trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tough. I ran into Sammy Hagar at a party not too long ago, and I was, we were talking about tequila, first of all, and then we were talking about music. And then I was just like, man, I got to tell you, like, I love your songwriting. Like, I love the major minor stuff that you guys ended up doing. I love the pop element that you brought to Van Halen. And then we ended up talking about songwriting for 2 hours and drinking tequila, which was choice. But yeah, it's a fine line.
Yeah.
It's a fine line.
You walk away going, oh, just turned into a fanboy.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a fanboy. I mean, it's hard not to be a fanboy with some of these guys. Like, come on. Steven Tyler, Jesus, his voice is incredible. The song that I mixed on his last record, I remember just pulling the vocal up and just being like, oh, rock star. This is why he's a rock star.
That's why he's a rock star.
Yeah.
Are you still hybrid?
Yeah.
Are you using less analog?
It depends. Like, I do some weird stuff. So I get to do, a couple times a year, I get to do these things for Disney, which are usually for the park. They use them for parades or fireworks shows, or like, I don't know, Disney has a lot of stuff going on all the time, what's really crazy is like, if you go and see a parade at Disney and you hear the music and the orchestra, that's the London Symphony Orchestra at Abbey Road. They don't pull punches on any of this stuff. It's like super high quality all the way, but I'll be mixing 450 tracks, for a song. And you can't do that on a desk. Like, and I'm doing 14 or 15 of those cues, and we've got a deadline to meet, and so I'm going to do it all in the box. So if I need to use analog outboard stuff, like, I'll just print it, I'll process it into the box and just use it. But that's all mixed in the box. And I saw people making weird faces. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's really easy to get to 450 tracks when you have 3 passes of a 110-piece orchestra at Abbey Road, 5 passes of, a 50-voice choir, full pop production, 4 lead vocals with harmonies and backgrounds and all of that stuff. Like, it cranks up pretty fast.
And if they're supplying you with their blends, it's like they're giving you a 2-track anyway.
I wish.
But you know what I mean? If they did a choir and they individually wiped it and then they blended it to a 2-track.
They don't. A lot of the times we do that, or a lot of times my assistant will do that. They'll give me like choir front, choir back, choir room, melody, choir front, choir back, choir room, harmony, choir front, girls, guys, blend, shouted, crowd, like all that stuff. It's a lot. Yeah, it would be great to just take Simon's stereo 2 mix and use that, but
Right.
This is stuff where you have the score in front of you, and you're going to be sitting there doing individual rides on like second violins, so you can't use blends. You have to have control over all the elements.
I did a Christian Castro record a couple of years ago, and it was all orchestrated, and I had the arranger come down, and I'm just like,
Help.
how do you want to hear this?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's just too crazy. Because it was full orchestra, and then they had quartets like doubled and quadrupled added to it, and I'm just like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
and he understood, because sometimes people will just sort of switch off and go, I don't know, you do it how it sounds good. It's like, no, what was your vision here? What were you trying to do?
Yeah, you wrote this for a certain reason, so that's a great idea. I wish I had thought of that.
I just think it was an option. I don't think it's probably not always an option to, hey, bring the arranger over. Come over and hang out for a couple of days.
Well, and this stuff is Disney, so you know what it sounds like. It's Pirates of the Caribbean, except that, when Zimmer does it, and I've been out to, have you interviewed Hans or Alan Meyerson?
I haven't interviewed Alan, but I do know Alan. I did a panel with him. I moderated a panel.
He's this insanely talented guy, but the level of detail they get into when you hear like Hans's scores, it's full orchestra, fully edited to match full synth orchestra and full synthesizers, all layered in parts, like held parts, short parts, marcatos, legatos, like all this stuff. It's insane. In fact, half of the mix on orchestral stuff is the setup.
I can believe it.
The template, the way everything gets set up, all the nested VCAs and all this stuff. Otherwise, it just takes forever. It's pretty crazy, but it's a fun challenge.
I know with Meyerson, when I was on a panel with him, I was moderating the panel, and we all went down. He was the last person, and I said to him, I was like, I'll be honest, I'm a bit intimidated by you. And he sort of laughed, and I was like, and I looked at all the rock and roll guys that were just sitting there, and I was like, we just kind of do things, and sometimes it accidentally distorts, and it's kind of cool, and then that thing's out of phase for a minute, but it was kind of cool. You, on the other hand, when I listen to your stuff, it's all beautiful. It's a bit intimidating when everything's that well recorded and that well mixed.
Yeah, it's very exacting. Yeah. It's very precise.
Because we kind of live off the mistakes. That's where a lot of the creativity comes from.
Right.
Like, oops.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I miss the most about mixing on a console was swapping to the next song and hitting play without changing anything and seeing what comes up through what channels, through what reverbs, through what crazy EQs that you never would have thought of. Like you never would have considered, oh, I should do that. But you just hit play and see what comes up, and sometimes it inspires you to do something you never would have thought of. That's a little tough when the Pro Tools stuff is, you're kind of building as you go, and it's hard to back yourself back out of that.
I remember the early iterations of Pro Tools. They, I think it was probably 4 or 5. Sometimes tracks would send to the wrong effects, just
randomly.
No buzzing.
Yeah.
And whenever that would happen, I would just go into record on my 2-track at the bottom. I'd just go into record, and you'd just get, and then before you restarted, just so you could get it.
Yep.
But now Pro Tools works really well.
Sometimes.
Yeah, works fairly good.
Fairly decently.